This summer, our building's AC broke, and one of our friends was super kind and lent us his fan. But there was a problem. The selector knob was missing, and this little chassis was broken. So as a thank you, we wanted to replace that selector knob. So I took some dimensions with my trusty calipers. This diameter was about 6.5. And then there's this little flat cutout section that was about 4, and that's how it actually turns. Now this wobbles quite a bit, so it's a little unreliable, so I just took the best dimensions I could, and it turned out to be about 14 millimeters in length. I rounded up. Alright, so this next part kind of takes a little while. If you're not interested, just skip ahead to this time right here. Alright, so first I kind of remodeled the peg thing based on those dimensions. Then I did a little bit of an offset just so it wouldn't be too tight of a fit. And then I added a circle just around it. I set it to like 12 millimeters, that's pretty good, and extruded it to 14. So that was the length. I added a little bit more on the back end just so there'd be more to grab onto. And then from there I just slowly started building up from it. Once I had the basic shape down, I wanted to add kind of a rounded top to it. So I was playing around with some heights, trying to figure out what the best, depth was. And I was running into a little bit of an issue because it wasn't quite lining up. So I was trying to make it tangent with that side line and that top line. In the end, it was giving me more trouble than it was worth, so I decided to cheat a little bit and cut off just a tiny section right there. Now it's nice and round and seemed to be perfectly fitting. Once I was happy with the shape, I decided to revolve it around the center. Now it has a nice dome to it. It was looking pretty good, but domes are kind of hard to grab onto, so I decided to try and cut into it a little bit. I was being a little creative with this, just trying to see what was most ergonomic, and effectively what I did was I outlined the sides, and then I do a little cutaway, something called a swept cut. And so what that does is it traces a circle around that line and cuts it out. Now this doesn't look very ergonomic right now, so I extended it up a little bit higher, changed the diameter so it was a little smaller, and from there we can work with it. Now this top section was flat, which I wasn't a fan of, so there's a couple different ways you can round it out. I decided to just do another revolve cut and just cut out a sphere. This bottom section doesn't really matter because it's going to be flat against the fan, so that looked pretty good to me at first. So I decided to kind of replicate it in a circular pattern, give it some grooves, and then round it out. But I ended up making, like a Coke bottle or a bell pepper. I tried rounding it out some more and just to see if I could fix it, make it look a little smoother, and I wasn't a huge fan. Still trying to round it out, but again, it just kind of looked like a Coke bottle, which isn't the most difficult to grab onto, but it wasn't exactly the look I was going for. I tried adding this base here to see if I could kind of fix it up, make it look less like a weird Coke bottle bell pepper shape. Try to round this out, and again, I just didn't love it. Wasn't vibing with it, so I decided to delete it all and start over. Alright, so that last design was something new that I was trying out, didn't really work out. So this is something I've done before many times, and effectively what I'm doing here is I'm cutting out these fins. So first I trace a line, get it to the good length, replicate it in a circular pattern, and now what I'm going to do is effectively trim away all those excess lines. And you'll start to notice these highlighted sections pop up. And those highlighted sections is what is cuttable, so I take those and I extrude cut them straight down to this. So I start rounding these edges out, just to see, if it was more ergonomic. Then I realized that's probably a little too far of a cut. I don't want it, losing integrity. So I cut it to this line, this vertex right here, and that seemed pretty good. So from here, I started rounding it out like I was before. From my experience, if you want to make something look really professional, you just fillet it. And basically that just means rounding out those edges. Makes it nice and, smooth looking, nice and comfy, nice and ergonomic, and really can't be too curvy. Lastly, just round out this top section, and bada bing bada boom, that looks pretty good to me. So here you might notice that it doesn't move for like a couple seconds, and in real time that's a couple minutes. I was just trying to see if there's anything else I could add to it. So I was looking at the bottom and I realized maybe I could round it out because, less surface area and contact means it'll turn smoother. But then I gotta think, okay, I'm 3D printing this, that might make it a little bit more difficult to print, so I decided now it's fine. So I go ahead and save it, export it, and it's looking pretty good. I think that's nice and functional, pretty ergonomic. And then before sending it off to the printer, I just wanted to double check, make sure that that internal section had enough material around it so it wouldn't crack after prolonged use. Looks pretty good. And then just to verify, I do a cutout section just to, again, see if there's enough material around it. And there seems to be plenty, so I think this will last a pretty good time. From there, I save it again, and then I save it as an STL to export to my slicing software, basically the 3D printing software. I like to use Prusa Slicer just because I've got a Prusa printer and it does really, really well. So I import it, turn it around so it's nice and flat on the bed, take a look at it, and then I looked through a couple of the settings because the print I had done prior to this one required some kind of specifics. So I just wanted to double check all my settings, basically just checking how dense it is, how many layers it has, both in the X and the Y, how many loops, any support material. If you're more interested in this, leave a comment and I'd love to go over more in detail with it. But I slice it, it looks pretty good, layer looks pretty good, and I think we're good to print. Just taking a look at the infill here. Perfect. Exporting it, and off to the printer we go. So the print turned out perfectly. I printed at 0.2 millimeters and nice layer adhesion. Took about an hour and 15 minutes and I was super happy with it. No cleanup needed. Alright, so normally I would like to pressure fit, but because that chassis was broken, pushing on it was kind of difficult. So I decided to make the tolerance a little bit looser and then just super glue it on. Now, I didn't have any black filament to match the color of the fan, but it kind of doesn't matter because it's going to be behind it anyway. No one's ever going to really see it. Alright, everything's glued in place. Time to give it a test. Perfect.